So the first thing is that, are you in a program? And if someone else you're asking someone else to start a program and you're not in one for yourself, or some kind of protocol, there could be, I'm not saying there will be, but there could be a little bit of perceived hypocrisy. So I've tried to be in some kind of protocol the entire 25 years I've been practicing, but I'm not perfect. And when I drift too far away, usually life or a client or a friend or a family member will kind of point me back towards center, which is I need to be having someone else look at me objectively with discernment. And I think that being in a program allows me to see others clearer, because I'm working on my own clarity through that program. And there could be a lot of different comments on what that might look like. But for me, the most important thing is I get up out of bed and I do yoga. When I get up and go to bed, I find 3 things to be grateful for. When I get up and go to bed, I have the mantras I say to myself for a couple of minutes. Just to be transparent, one of my mantras is I expand in love, success, and abundance, and I inspire others to do the same. So there's a greater success and abundance for me, and I'm giving it away to others also. It's very clean. I have 3 others through the Mankind Project, and that's I create a world of harmony by checking in with my heart. So I create a world of, and then how am I doing it? So I create a world for me of harmony by checking in with my heart. Mm-hmm. The next one is I create a world of abundance by using my sexual or creative energy wisely. And lastly, the third one that has to do with spirit, I create a bridge between the worlds by seeing, knowing, asking, getting curious about what I am. And the last one for me triggers a deep, deep silence internally, almost like the Byron Katie inquiries. Who would I be without that thought? Generates a lot of quiet inside me. It's really refreshing. Moving right along to the next slide. So looking at the other, these are 4 of the things, and I would love you guys to add anything else you see there. Is you're looking at this tree on the right side here. This is from an Ayurvedic book, and we'll go into that in a second. But reflection, generally, when I get reflection from someone, I'm looking at what are they reflecting to me about myself, especially when I have projections and judgments. Example, I went to I had a couple of years ago, I did a class at 5 Branches, and I had a lot of acupuncture students in the class. So what did I have reflected to me was a lot of curiosity. Like I felt very curious and enthused, but I realized that wasn't even necessarily my own. That was the class's curiosity and enthusiasm, and I just was part of the wave. You could also call that a transference, right? It was transferred into me or projected into me. So when we're looking at someone else, it's really important. Those 4 things are important to keep in mind is what are we reflecting back and forth? What are we projecting? What are we transferring? And what are we judging? Because remember from last week, discernment is clean and neutral. Judgment involves an emotional charge. And then lastly, looking at other on the most basic level is if you understand that plants have the same organ systems in different ways as humans, then you can start to look at plants as a way to help humans. So if you look at that tree there, the roots of the tree are like the brain. The sex organs are like the flowers. The blood is like the chlorophyll. And there's a lot more. The connective tissue is the trunk and the branches. The circulatory system is the sap and the blood. I don't know about a tree endocrine system and nervous system, but I'm sure that there is one. And a tree immune system. So they do have immune systems and they respirate through the leaves. I believe they also respirate through the roots too. And their digestive system, if you look on the right there, wow, well, what's a tree or a plant digestive system? I'm going to let you guys ponder that, and that could be something during the discussion. What is the plant's digestive system. Great. That's a great exploration right there. There's other models in nature that we'll be going through in the coming weeks, like the Chinese 5-element model. The Native American medicine wheel is another one, which is related to the 4-element system. There is a 3-element system in Ayurveda and a 2-element system called yin and yang that originates also in the Orient. Beginner mind. I'm going to give you a couple of words that talk about beginner mind. So how do you find that quiet place that can assess with discernment? First and foremost, Carlos Castaneda has a word that I find quite valuable, and it's called stopping the world. Are you able to stop the world? In other words, can you get past your addiction called thinking? How do I get access to that blank chalkboard? The easiest way, I will tell you from personal experience, is your breath. I got a story from a client. He's in cognitive decline. He's in his mid-30s. He is scared. He is scared like he's never been scared before, because he can't think like he used to. He can't do things like he used to. And so I'm asking him, like, well, and he says, I can't even, what did he say? I can't even think clearly or remember what I'm doing moment to moment. I can't take on anything. So how does he find that quiet place? Well, he also said his mind is very racy when his breath is shallow and fast. And that to me was a tremendous insight, because he got it on his own. I didn't have to point it out to him. So let me repeat that. He says, I noticed that my mind is working faster when my breath is shallow and rapid. And when we wake up sort of wake up out of that place, we can see that we need to take a deep breath. So let's all take a deep breath in. That's the fastest way to get access to the blank chalkboard, is the breath. But there's other techniques we'll be talking about, and I'm sure for some people, yoga does it. Exercise for me helps. Listening to music can help. Various forms of affection, intimacy can help. Gardening helps. So you can see that when you see clearly, then the triggers and reactions become a little more lucid. And then pausing for a moment, and then preparing for a client and decompressing after are really important for beginners. So in about a month or two, we'll have a community clinic, and I'll be describing my process of how I prepare for people and how I decompress after in an ideal world. So preparing means, not overscheduling. It means putting yourself in a good state of mind. It means if you need to even contrive a good mood, or putting on the mask / the face, that has to be done. Great. Write down your questions if you have any on that. Let's just read that for a minute. Oops. So I like the translation of what's being said there as you're a spirit having a human experience. You're not a human having a spiritual experience. And I think that's important to understand, that you're a human you're a spirit having a human experience. So one of the reasons we call this, one of the reasons we call this alchemy is because alchemy is change, it's transformation. So it's important to realize that we're talking about consciousness here. And so alchemy is about conscious change, basically. And I think that we change whether we like it or not. You know, we can follow the winds of spirit, which I used to call myself a leaf blown in the wind. And I feel like I'm the wind now, more of, and I'm not just this leaf being blown by a wind I can't control. So I think I'm not asking anyone to believe what I believe either. I think that belief is really a 4-letter word in my world. I'd rather investigate and come to a loose conclusion. I know that there is a life beyond this life, through and through, but I'm not asking you to believe that. I would never ask anyone to believe something that's not in their direct experience. So that's just my take on it. Some tools for looking at others, and we're going to expand on this later. I don't know a lot about NLP, but I know enough to know that I need to use positive language, and I want to have my clients be listening to their language. What are they saying, and how are they saying it? How are they sitting? How are they using their eyes? How are they using their hands? It's really important in the initial visit to take a note of that. How do they smell? Is their voice very loud or very soft? And if they smell, what do they smell like? In Chinese medicine, there's the 5 smells. You can smell burnt, you can smell putrid, you can smell rancid, you can smell salty, believe it or not, you can smell fishy. And when you know how to spot those different smells, then you can go to the element associated with them and the organ system associated with that. Really exciting. So I think I might have, we might talk about NLP, if any of you knows a little more, when we take a break from this PowerPoint. And the next part is safety and trust building. And we talked about that earlier on an earlier slide when Isabel brought it up. So remember that Isabel's reframe is that, can we trust the client? You know, the client, we want them to trust us, but that's an important reframe that I hadn't thought about, is do we trust that darn client? You know, because if we can't trust our client, we're not going to go very deep with them. And I go, wow, that's something that I've taken on a few clients where I don't trust them because I needed money. And that's an important realization, is I would rather now be broke, sleeping under a bridge, than work with a client that I can't interface with and trust. I'm clear about that. Like I told you guys, I had a client the other day, last week, that I couldn't trust because she was throwing all these projections onto me. You're going to make me eat meat. You're going to make me eat meat. You're going to make me eat meat. And it was like, okay, we're not going to be able to work together. Not now, not ever. But one of you guys might work well with her quite fine. That's great. And then finally is that getting curious piece is so imperative. And when I started my practice, the first 13 years from 2000 to 2013, I never missed a day, not once. Not because I was sick, because I was on vacation, nothing, never missed a day. And you know why? It's because I know that when I put myself in a position of healing, I'm getting healing too. It's the whole Reiki thing. So if I don't feel good, fine, I'm going to show up and I'm going to get healed too. So getting curious is really important, where I'm leaning in, and I'm not a perfect master at this by any means, but trying to lean into the discomfort, getting curious, like, well, what is this? My example is right now, October, November, I've known for 25, 30, 35 years that October, November are the hardest months of the year for me. So I usually prepare ahead of time for, it's really difficult because I'm living in a dark world. Literally, it's really dark at times. So dark, I don't want to be in public. I feel toxic, and I really have to do a lot of work. So getting curious about it. Well, what is this? And how can I get behind it a little more instead of pushing it away? Very, very painful. I can't even tell you how hard it is sometimes for me. Today, this morning was like the La Brea tar pits of delusion, my entire morning. Horrible. And that's the next slide.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Let's save it for, I'm gonna have a couple more slides. Let's wait till that time. And that's what this is: experiment, investigate, explore. And in the next, when I make this slide later, there'll be a link here to the Foundation 1 folder. So there's 4 health foundations, and the foundations give us a means to experiment, investigate, and explore. So that's those are 3 key words that we want: direct experience here. Remember, I'm trying to give someone an experience that they can't deny. Because once you have an experience of wellness, you don't need a should, you don't need a poker, you don't need enthusiasm, you just need to do it, you need to do. That's what experience gives us. So foundation 1 has 2 parts. This is the largest foundation by far, and I'll have a graphic for this next time. But there's 2 parts to it, and here's part 1. The chooser. So the chooser is how well and how skillfully we choose what we want to eat. We're going to keep this contextualized on nutrition. So this will be ripe for questions, you guys. So what if somebody keeps choosing, they know they shouldn't drink at night, but they keep drinking? I got a lot of clients like that. Hey, Craig, I got blood sugar problems, I got candida problems, my Epstein-Barr antibodies are up, my candida, but God darn it, I can't stop drinking those 10 beers a night. So that's a chooser issue. And then if they have a chooser issue, we have to look at, maybe we need to refer them out to a psychotherapist, Maybe we have to get them on a retreat, get them away from their rotten husband or wife that keeps feeding sugar in their face all day. I had a client with, stage 2 breast cancer. And she came to me in tears after a couple of months about what a jerk her husband was, who kept putting sugary bonbons and ice cream in front of her face every night in the TV set. And she was stuck because she was absolutely reliant on him, for income with the family. And I mean, she was so stuck and crying in tears. And how do I get past this? And it was really difficult for her, not because she had this enabling husband. So her chooser was being, yes, thank you, enabled and sabotaged by a guy who couldn't man up and support her in her choice to be better. And we'll see a lot of that. Another chooser issue might be, gee, I know I need to go to bed early, but I'm not doing it. So that's what I call a disconnect with the future self. And I think we talked about this last week. Future Craig veto. There's future Monica veto, future Isabel veto, future Anna veto, future Noel veto, where you check in with your future self. Well, hey, future self, in the morning, what time should I go to bed? And then you're in connection with your future person. You're not going to have resentment. So future Craig veto works really well for me if I have the grace to remember to ask. You got to ask. Usually it doesn't just pop in on its own, although that would be ideal also. So the chooser, the body parts and the nourishment that comes for this is the endocrine system and the nervous system are the 2 systems that help the chooser, right? Your hormonal axis and your nervous system, your brain, your spine. So the nourishment for those 2 systems are mainly B vitamins and minerals. To overgeneralize it, but I can't say enough about those 2 things for your nervous system and endocrine system, B vitamins and minerals. Specifically, the pituitary needs manganese, the adrenals love sodium, the thyroid loves iodine. What's the one I left out? Adrenals, brain, pituitary, thyroid. I guess that's enough for now. Just a couple of quick examples. Next slide. Blood sugar. That's the second part of first foundation, is your blood sugar axis. In this slide, next time I present it, we'll go in a little more depth with this, but your blood sugar, I'm actually going to ask you guys the question and then we'll go over it in the question round. So the question is, why is blood sugar so important as the first foundation? Again, not to answer now, but we'll have a little discussion. And it'll be recorded, so that's fine. We'll edit out anybody's answers that you don't want in the recording. But I think it's important that you guys try and answer this question because I already know. So why is blood sugar so important? Why is it right up there with the chooser? And the hint is there's 3 main parameters that blood sugar covers. 3 main parameters. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So you guys asked for more specific around nutrition. Okay, here's the most specific one I've got right now. And this is how we start. because you've got to know where they came from, what their blood type is, and what their metabolic type is. I think, Isabel, we need to get you those forms so you can fill them out, and then we can see where you're at. Because I think everybody else has done it. Anna, Monica, Noelle, Tara. Yeah, everybody else is familiar with this. So your metabolic type is like a teeter-totter. And I'll go over that a little more on a whiteboard maybe when we're done here. So your metabolic type is really important because on one side of the teeter-totter is the person who burns carbohydrates in a healthy way for energy. And on the other side of the, and those are the A answer people. The metabolic type questionnaire has 3 answers, A, B, and C. Multiple, I won't say multiple guess, because if you're guessing on this test, boy, you're in trouble. Oh my God. So the A answer people are the carb types, and they generally need carbohydrates for energy. They don't burn fat well for energy. The C answer people, they burn fat for energy, and they don't burn carbs well for energy. They burn them too quickly. And I'm going to tell you why in a more advanced part of this class, but there's many reasons why from metabolic typing. And then even the types of proteins, the carb type generally needs a very lighter meat, lower fat protein. And the fat people, the really protein types, they need the really rich, high nucleic acid, purine rich, dark meats, organ meats, fish eggs, and they need a lot more of it. So what we're trying to do is get the clients clear where they're going to have an experience. And I've got a brand new client that she was mostly more vegetarian leaning, and we did a metabolic type test. She's obviously a protein type, and the input so far has been nothing less than miraculous. Mm-hmm. She's now calling herself a meat eater because she feels so much better eating meat. And that's because of the questionnaire and the blood type and the ancestry. She would have never gotten that in a million years had she not met me. Because we pointed her in the right direction. I didn't shoot her. I said, why don't you try that? And then she did. And she's like, wow, an hour after I eat, I'm now no longer falling asleep. That's the number one thing to take away from your meals, to tell your client is, what kind of a meal do you need where an hour after you're done eating, you're full of energy? And Noelle remembers a guy named Mark David, and Mark David's quote on that I really appreciated, which was, get up from the meal when you're full of energy. Stop eating when you're full of energy. I love that quote. So consciously under eating usually gives us more energy. Now, there's exceptions to that, and we'll go into that later. But that's the most important takeaway from client diet centered around is they're looking at their cravings when they're done eating, their energy levels, and their mental state. You know, are they clearer? We should always feel better after we eat. If we don't, the meal didn't work. Let me repeat that. If we don't feel better an hour after we eat, the meal didn't work. And we need to look at what the hell we just ate and not do it next time. That's imperative. And overeating cancels everything out. And that's back to the chooser thing, right? I overate last week and I suffered for 3 days. I ate too late, ate too much fat, ate too much chocolate. I shouldn't be eating chocolate in the first place. And boy, did I pay the price. It was a horrendous 2 days. The third day was a little better. But be careful what you ask for. I asked 15 years ago to suffer when I did something I shouldn't do. And I'll be darned, grace gives me exactly what I asked for. I suffered because I was out of whack. So be careful what you ask for. You'll probably get it. I'm going to move on. No, ancestry is important because sometimes you won't know their blood type. They haven't filled out the metabolic type questionnaire. And that's where there's a series of questions you can ask the person that I'll give you guys a script for. And one of them is, you know, where'd your ancestors come from? You know, are they from Africa? Are they from the tropics? They're from the Eskimo North Pole? Are they from Newfoundland? Or, you know, are they from Europe? And then you get to see, like, well, if a client's ancestors were from Africa and they were eating millet and sorghum, and we're trying to force wheat down their throat, they're probably not going to do very well. because their DNA is set up to digest millet and sorghum. For God's sakes, you know? So when I started eating millet, it was a gaseous essential. When I started eating quinoa, gaseous essential, because my ancestors ate barley, rye, wheat, and oats, mostly. So you see, it's really important to know what your ancestors, where they lived, or at least a little bit about it. And oh, look at that. I think that's the last one. And it's probably getting close to 5. Not, yeah. Okay, I'm going to stop the share.
I'm here now.
Monica's here. She's in the background behind.
Hi.
Okay, so
Maybe I'll sit back here so they can see me.
you cannot, when you're recording this meeting. I can't minimize it. What? Oh, interesting. Okay, does anybody have any questions? I think Isabel had one. Well, I can't minimize it, but I can do that. There we go. That's better. We'll get that PowerPoint back. Okay, so we had a question. So nobody had any questions about this?
I have a quick one. I didn't write fast.
I do.
I do.
Okay, good.
Okay.
I think Isabel's first, so let Isabel go up. How do I get out of that? There it goes. That's better. Okay. I was trying to get back to this other slide where I was asking that question. I think it's right there. Okay, Isabel, go ahead.
I'll wait. I'm not quite sure how to word my question, so I'll take it later.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Right.
There is a chat box question.
Who else?
Great, Tara asked, how far back does ancestry affect a person? Boy, that's a great question. Yeah. So, you know, the simple Native American answer would be 7 generations. And each generation past the most current, there's a sort of a bell-shaped curve where you're going to get probably 80% of your need from your parents and grandparents and maybe great-grandparents. And then beyond that, you know, you're looking at 10, 20%. But if you have a strong, like my ancestors really traveled around a lot from Europe. So I'm not really clear, like, where did they end up, you know, over many generations? I really don't know. So it's different than if you're sort of ancestral vagabonds versus, you know, everybody came out of Greenland, and I'm a Greenland native, you know, back 25 generations. Boy, wouldn't that be weird? I'm a Greenland native of 25 generations. Like, whoa. Well, it made you laugh at least. I see Isabel smiling. Okay, who's next? Next question.
Mine is, what was the second? Pituitary needs manganese and thyroid needs iodine. What was the other one you said?
Oh, the adrenals like sodium.
Thank you.
Sodium and vitamin C, actually. We're talking whole food vitamin C, which also includes, okay, here's a clinical pearl, not totally relevant, but slightly. So how does vitamin C relate to the adrenals and the thyroid is the question. Anybody want to try an advanced question? Laugh out loud.
Well, I would just say that I know vitamin C helps 200 body functions. So there's probably so many things it helps. That's why. In general. So.
Did you guys hear that? So Monica said she knows vitamin C helps over 200 body functions, and that's true. But there's a specific part of the C complex that you don't hear about. I didn't even hear about it until I found standard process 12 years ago. It's like, what? How come I didn't know that? So what does, the clue is, what does the T in T4 and T3 stand for in thyroid hormone? The thyroid hormone is T4 or T3, and they're going to call it thyroxine, but it's not. There's an amino acid that's that T. The 3 and the 4 is iodine molecules. So what is that T? It's your hint.
Yeah, amino acid.
Begins with a T.
Theanine?
Good question. Nope.
No, what is it called?
Monica's over here trying to storm her brain. Anybody else want to try? Oh, it's so fun.
Tridothyronine.
Good try.
At the clinic, we deal with blood tests like that, so I'm trying to rack my memory and remember what the doctor has told me.
So what is triiodothiamine made from, though? You got the right name, but what's it made from? What's the amino acid? That's the T. Begins with T.
Thyroxine?
Good try. So that will be part of this first module. One of the 10 classes will be going over amino acids. We'll be going over fatty acids. We'll be going over different types of carbohydrates. So I kind of set you guys up to fail a little bit. But the amino acid is tyrosine. And there's an enzyme associated with this amino acid in vitamin C called tyrosinase. So add an ASE on the end of tyrosine, and you will see that there's an enzyme in vitamin C that helps your body process tyrosine, for God's sakes. What the hell? How come we're not taught this stuff?
Yeah.
Mm.
You know, I had to stumble upon it from a standard process doctor, for God's sakes. Noel will remember. It's Mark Anderson, Noel. That guy's been with Royal Lee forever. I found it out from him. So copper is part of the whole food vitamin C. What the hell? Copper? What? Bioflavonoids are part of the vitamin C complex. Used to be called vitamin P. P as in Paul, for permeability factor.
But you started off with a question of why vitamin C helps adrenals and what?
Thyroid.
And it's because we need the amino acid tyrosine?
No, it helps the thyroid function because there's an enzyme in vitamin C that helps the body process tyrosine called tyrosinase.
Right. But we need that for
We
the
don't
adrenals and the...
We don't need it. I'm just saying that whole food vitamin C, when you're getting it from a plant, fresh off the plant, is going to help probably the whole endocrine system. When we're talking about ascorbic acid that we're taking, through a powder or, those ascorbic acid crystals, well, we're only getting part of the C complex. We're not getting the tyrosinase, the bioflavonoids, the copper. We're just getting this one isolated antioxidant that's part of the complex. Does that help?
Mm-hmm.
So think of vitamin C as your fresh food process. That's what the vitamin complex is. Because when you pick a vegetable, the green bean I'm going to pick on because that's where the data I got was, when you pick a green bean, the vitamin C drops 80% in 24 hours. 80%. How old is your produce you're buying from the health food store? It's 2 to 3 days old. Vitamin C has plummeted 90% by that point. Had a new client yesterday. She has lymphedema and she has wounds that won't heal in her lower legs. And I told her, I looked at her diet and I said, you're not getting enough vitamin C, honey, because vitamin C is your wound healing vitamin. Collagen, all that stuff. So a good example right there. This client thought she was getting enough C, eating enough fruits and vegetables, so she thought. But I told her, you're buying your vegetables at Trader Joe's?
Mm.
Those are 5 to 7 days old.
Mm-hmm.
You're eating dead food, honey, appearing as something nutritious.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I shop at Farmer's Market every week. If I was really extreme, I'd be going twice a week and getting that fresh food. At the end of the week, though, I got a fridge full of food that's 6 days old, so I try to use it up, Great question. Thanks, Noel, for that question.
So I want to give it a try with my question. I'm not quite clear how to word it. So you were mentioning that you are in this state of darkness. And so when you or your client is in that state, sometimes, it comes with the season. Like for example, we just went from summer to transitioning into fall, and it's kind of natural to be going into this kind of from exuberance to inner reflection onto winter being darkness, right? So how do you on the one hand make sure that it is a state of disease or it is a state of emotional and spiritual reflection that really should happen?
Thank you. You worded that quite well. So I'll rephrase it. So Isabel asked, how do I know or discern between the natural contraction of the fall season, because that's what nature's doing. It's contracting and all the energy is going down. So our energy is doing this. It's going down into our roots. So it's like we're being squeezed like a sponge. And you're exactly right, Isabel. And so there's a natural process of, we call it grief. It's a natural process of letting go this time of year, letting go of the summer heat, letting go of all the summer fun, letting go of all the plans we had, because now they're going to stop, especially if you live in New England or Alaska, where we're not going to be outside much, in the winter. But in our climate, like, woohoo, we're outside year round. So for me personally, I'm no different than all of you. I am different. I choose to work more than I should, probably. And ideally, this time of year, when I get older, I'm going to schedule October and November off. I probably won't be working in the future. That's what I'm working towards. It's like, it's not going to work during these months, because I don't feel as effective. I don't feel connected to almost anything. And some of that's pathology out of my past, yes. Some of it's a natural contraction and all this stuff's coming to the surface. And we all have that to some degree. I'm just the transparent guy up here teaching and saying, hey, yeah, I'm aware of it. And once you become aware of something, that's the start. Just being aware of it's okay. You don't have to even process the stuff. And so sometimes it processes on its own by just looking at it and being with it and being with the feeling of it. And it's very uncomfortable to have dark thoughts all day, every day. And that's what I go through. Because right now, a lot of people won't own their own darkness, and they're projecting it out with COVID. Oh, I'm wearing my muzzle, got my social distancing. I'm going to project all my shit out onto the world and not own my own shit. And there are people like us who are empaths, and we feel that, and we're holding too much. And there's no way to get around that right now, because the Jungian soup, the stew we're all in, the empaths are getting it the worst. Because they're holding that energy that others refuse to hold their own and take responsibility for. So when Trump got elected, something happened where I felt like 90% of the weight on me was lifted off. I don't even know what the hell happened, but something happened where people had to start owning their shit. Because there was this reflection of this guy that nobody likes, And it's like, here's our disowned part right up there as president, And so we got to own that, This guy is a reflection of the shit we don't like about ourselves. And we're not doing a very good job. Great. Hope I answered your question, Isabel. You're right on track with the surrender to what's already happening, with how much manipulation do I even want to do to my process, right?
But actually, I would love to hear her question more directly answered. I still have it. And maybe the rest of you got it, but I don't feel like it was answered.
Well, so my problem is, I'm coming from a European background, right? So I would be naturally sharing a story of that is grounded in European tradition, or in maybe even loosely related to Christianity, and that obviously cannot be right for everyone. So how do you, but again, I want to encourage the person also not knowing his or her spirituality to really sit with it and, am I supposed to inquire about their spirituality in order to find out if that is a natural process? And then someone who's who I barely know might not want to answer that.
Right. I think Noelle is looking for, I'm going to assume, Noelle, you can clarify. I think Noelle's looking for, what specifically, is you looking for personally in the practitioner, like me, or are you looking at how I help the other with theirs, Noelle? Where did I not answer that?
No, just that I thought the original question was, how do you discern between somebody going through a cycle of darkness or just the seasonal of darkness, which is quite natural, versus a downward spiral in their health that actually needs to be reversed, not supported in the direction it's already going as a larger health movement. That's what I thought the question was.
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so we go back to the first couple of slides. Is body language really tells me a lot. So the internally rotated shoulders slouch over. Generally, that's more of a chronic condition. But you look, if it's acute, then generally when something's acute, like I do pulses, and if something's right up on the surface of the pulses, that means something's just starting out. So intuition's first. I truly trust what comes up for me in my heart when I'm with somebody. And if I get a hit like, wow, this is recent, then I'm going to inquire about that without, if this is a first visit, for example, I'm probably going to just make a mental note about what I'm feeling when I'm sitting next to this person. And I might not go too much into that at a first visit. It might be a second or a third visit. Noelle and all you guys. That first visit is really about, I like the model of the fisherman. I'm going to throw out some bait. Okay, fish didn't bite. And that's how I tell, is I throw out bait, and I actually might purposefully challenge someone, or what's the word that I use? I have another word I use, where it's sort of like trying to trigger someone. Provocation, I provoke someone. I may try and provoke them to see what they're going to spit back to me. And the meat eater client, that was what I did with her. I provoked her by saying, well, of course, I'm not going to force you to do anything, but I added in, I said, but if I see that you're a blood type O, Northern European, ancestry, and your metabolic type has a lot of C answers, I'm going to tell you need to eat meat. And then what you do with that's up to you. And that's what really pissed her off. Because she was fishing for the answer she wanted to hear, which was, I'm not going to provoke you in any way. I'm not going to test you in any way. And that's not a client that works well with me.
Well, in counseling, this theme comes up as well. It's like, do you go further in the direction of what's popping up, or do you need to balance what's coming up? And I noticed that there'll be an unconscious response. So if I say to somebody who seems depressed, and I was like, yeah, let's just go further into that depression, and I'll make a little joke about it. If they spontaneously laugh and feel relieved by going even further, then that's a signal to me, like, oh yeah, this is part of the healing process. But if they actually get heavier at that idea, and it's an unconscious response, it's just sort of like this, you can tell they get kind of animated, or if it goes the other way, then it's like, okay, actually this needs to be balanced, not go further in that direction. So there must be some equivalent with the body. You must see bodies respond, even if their head is saying, if they're saying no, but they're going like this, right? It's just there.
Yes. Yeah, that's where you had the perfect metaphor of the fisherman. You just mentioned, you throw it out there and you see it's like sonar. You put the sonar out and you see what comes back, right? You throw the boomerang. Oh, wow, that came back, and wow, they actually responded with a little giggle. And so it's sort of an opening to go deeper is what I'm hearing, Versus when you act I don't know. I out of all of you, I've probably provoked Anna the most. She gets that distinction more than anybody probably. So I don't know. Let's say, Anna, you want to chime in for a second? Do you feel that you've been provoked? Or how's that feel on the other end when you get sort of poked at and,
It sucks. Yes, I've been provoked. Do you want me to specifically say the experience is, how it makes me feel? What do you want to know?
Well, I know that each of us has our own mixture of past traumas and acute stuff. And so
Yeah.
I think Noelle's question, is there any way you could refine your answer to help Noelle? Because, we're all a good mix of past chronic traumas and current stuff. So I think that the question might here just be like, you get when you get provoked, does it stir up the past shit?
Yeah, I mean, I know. I can't, it doesn't always, I can't identify it specifically, but I know enough now to know that it's in and around tone, and it's in and around words that are being used. And I get really like, there's a part of me that wants to jump up and just be like, F you, F off, back the F off, I'm gonna freaking come at you hard. That's my internal dialogue sometimes. First and foremost, what comes up is, this feels really combative, this feels really confrontational, this feels like fighting words, and I start to lower, and I start to coil, and I start to go down. And I'm like, you know, what happens for me is I get emotional, and I now have learned to be with the emotion after as much personal development training that I've done. I used to just coil down, shut up, and just agree, and inside say no, and outside say yes, and then just go away, and then never speak my truth. And now I speak up, and I cry, and I just say like, hey, this doesn't work. It feels like this is how I'm feeling. This is how, you know, you're saying what you're saying, but this is how I am feeling based on what you're, you know, how I'm receiving it. So I don't know if that helps.
Yes, well, my hit now, thanks, Anna. My hit now is then, so knowing what you guys know, what you just heard from Anna, so when you're on the other side of it, when you're doing the provoking, is to realize that we have our own, someone gets triggered, and then we get triggered by their trigger, right? And it's important to see that and be with it. Because the sonar thing to me is like, I'm putting some energy into this person and then to feel what's coming back to me. But the point of today's talk is, am I even clear that what's coming back to me is even clean? Or am I projecting stuff into this person that's my own crap? And I'm not an expert at that yet, but I know enough to know that if there's any emotionality to what I'm feeling with the client, then I know that I'm not clean. And so, Noelle, that might help you, is if, back to the discernment versus judgment thing. If I'm in a neutral place and I just see facts popping up in my gyroscope, I call it the switchboard back here, stuff will start popping in like rosemary and need to do this supplement and that. That's clean for me because there's no emotional tone. But I had a client yesterday that I had enough sleep, I was well rested, and by the end of the hour, I was passing out, like could barely keep my eyes open. And that wasn't mine. That's my point. That was their heavy, tired energy. And I got clean and clear that, take a deep breath, this isn't mine. And I had a client that taught me that. Not mine. Give it back. This client used to say, yeah, these people that throw their shit on me and blah, blah, blah. And she has MS, and she doesn't really have MS anymore because part of her MS was taking on everyone else's shit and internalizing it. Now she just says, not mine. I love that. Not mine. Now that could be used to extreme, called spiritual bypass, right? Not mine, not mine, not mine, netty, 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 not this, not this, not this. And then, well, what the hell are you going to own? Anything? You know, so there's a dance in there. I think this is a really important conversation, because if we're not clean in ourselves and we don't know how to be clean, how can we ever see another person clearly enough to guide them, right?
Craig, to that very point, or in and around the coursework that I did for about 5 years, the coursework leaders ongoingly work on a daily basis with their own coaches around their own stuff, their own life, their own filters, their own trauma, because they cannot sit in front of a classroom on every weekend for 3 weekends out of a month and work with people that have been molested, that have been raped, that have been traumatized, that have been beat, abused, verbally abused, with food, chains, whips. They have to work through ongoingly on a daily basis, because if somebody says, I was molested by my dad, and they're like, oh God, that thing, they can't possibly lead. So they have to ongoingly, so they call it getting complete. with, because if something triggers you, then clearly you're not complete. But I get what you're saying around, you know, that's at some point in time when you feel like you're clean or you're complete, it's over there with them, that there's an energy you're expressing. I wonder about that. I'm curious about that. I don't know, but I'm curious about that. If it's that you're clean, but is there like maybe a projection, like at all? Maybe that there's not something that's incomplete for you, but that is there like a projection?
I'm not really clear about the question. I'm not super clear about how I could even answer it.
Yeah.
I think it's important to realize that I've learned through my men's work that, you know, there are leaders that have done, you know, they've led 100 initiation weekends, and each of those men has a mentor. And so it's a checkpoint. And I definitely have my checkpoints, and I know when I need to use them is I don't want to use them. So when my little shadowy guy comes up, my little hermit, oh, I don't want to talk to anybody, I don't want to do anything. When the fact that I don't want to talk to anybody comes up, it means I need to go talk to one of my mentors. Or my psychotherapist or somebody to get resourced this energy. And you're exactly right, Anna. I'm always looking at, if anybody is like, what have I projected onto this person and what have I taken on from them, you know? And so generally when I end each session, I don't always remember, but there's an in-breath, I'm taking back what I put on the person, and there's an exhale, I'm giving you back what's yours. After body work, it's imperative to do that. Here, in-breath, I'm taking my shit off of you, out-breath, back, goes your stuff. You got to remove yours from the person too. It's a two-way street, right? So you want them off you, but you also got to remove yours off them. And it can be a simple imagination to start with. Like it might even be, you know, a super detailed process, just simple as an in-breath and an out-breath.
Yeah.
Not to over intellectualize it, you know, just needs to be felt.
Totally. Yeah. I had a question, and then perhaps we can, if everyone's ready to go to the break.
Oh yeah. You want to just save it for the end of the break, after the break?
I could.
Let's do that. That way everybody can get their quick break. So I'll, it's 5:08, about 5:13, 5:14, we'll start back up again. I'll turn the recorder on.